What's up, brothers? It's your brother G World 7_D. And here's another book by Dr. Rufus Jimerson, The Black Rulers, Military Leaders, Clergy, and Moors Who Saved Medieval Europe. Right? There's some things I disagree with in wording, stuff like that, but the main point is who the original people were on this planet. You have to know this and understand this. We're aboriginal to this planet, particularly here in America. Alright? Focus. Now right here. The rise of King Charlemagne to the first Holy Roman Emperor and the unifier of Western Europe. In 1771 AD, at the age of 30, Charlemagne, son of Pepin, began his long regal career as ruler of the kingdom of the Franks. He was a Negro. Charlemagne's own reign, the Franks were falling back into barbarism ways, neglecting their education and religion. At that time, the northern half of Europe was still pagan and lawless, while the south was marred in a conflict between the Roman Catholic Church and the Lombard Kingdom in Italy. This chaos in Europe motivated Charlemagne, 1742-1814, to strengthen his realm and to bring Christian order to Europe. In 1772, he launched a 30-year campaign to conquer and Christianize the powerful pagan Saxons in the north and subduing other barbarians raiding Europe. His campaign will result in the systematic expansion of his dream for a Christian Europe. To do so, he also subdued the Avars, a huge Tartar tribe on the Danube, and compelled the rebellious Bavarian dukes to submit to him. He used military force when opponents refused to accept his purchase of their holdings, respectively. Charlemagne once offered to pay the Lombard king Desiderius for the return of lands to the Pope, but when Desiderius refused, he seized his kingdom in 773 to subsequently restore the Papal States. Charlemagne's military prowess was built on his ability to move his armies over wide reaches of a country with unbelievable speed, with every move planned in advance. Prior to each campaign, he told his courts, princes, and bishops throughout his reign how many men they should bring, what arms they were to carry, and even what to load in the supply wagons. The key to Charlemagne's amazing conquests was his ability to plot military expeditions. During his reign of 46 years, he sent out 53 of them. Meticulous planning and organization would later be replicated in Napoleon's success in conquering Europe. Charlemagne's organizing abilities also served him well when organizing the government districts within his empire. By 800, he was undisputed ruler of Western Europe. His vast realm consisted of what is now France, Switzerland, Belgium, and the Netherlands. It also included half of present-day Italy and Germany, part of Austria, and the Spanish March border, which reached to the Ebro River. In his aftermath, Charlemagne restored much of the unity of the old Roman Empire and paved the way for the development of the Holy Roman Empire. In 768, Charles, king of the Franks, sought to drive the white pagan barbarians back into Eastern Europe. The Pope in Rome was also under duress, under great pressure. In 799, for the third time in half a century, a pope was asking for help from the Frankish king. Pope Leo III was being physically attacked by his enemies in the streets of Rome. They were threatening to blind him and cut out his tongue to make him incapable of speaking out and holding his office. In quest of security, Leo III made his way through the Alps to visit Charlemagne at Paderborn, As a result of this visit, Charlemagne agreed to travel to Rome in 800 to support the Pope. In a Christmas Day ceremony at St. Peter's Basilica, Leo was due to anoint Charlemagne's son as his heir. Charlemagne rose for a prayer, and the Pope placed a crown on his head and acclaims him Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. He did express his displeasure, but accepts the honor. The displeasure was based on the fact that at this time that the legal emperor was undoubtedly the one in Constantinople. Nevertheless, this anointment launched the concept of the new Holy Roman Empire, which would play an important role in defining Western European history. A century later, the Holy Roman Empire only becomes formally established separate from the East. But in 800 AD, Charlemagne was anointed as Charles, most serene Augustus, crowned by God, great and pacific emperor, governing the Roman Empire. Upon Charlemagne's death, his son Otto became the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, I showed you a picture of King Otto. That's a straight-up Negro, man. All these people are Negroes. And here's a Charlemagne. Okay, notice the little orb or something he's holding. It's like a round circle, like the rulership of the world. It's round. He has it in his left hand. Notice he knows his Negro with the crown. Alright. Go on. Okay, get it focused. According to research comprised by Mark Washington, the Europe of the 8th century AD was mostly populated by indigenous Afro-Europeans in Central Europe prior to overwhelming invasion of Caucasians from Central Russia. These migrants were later called Germans and today are the majority in Northern and Western Europe. The indigenous Europeans, Moors, migrated into what they call Europa, named after the African goddess, thousands of years before the Christian era. In the famous sculpture of Charlemagne in Aachen Chapel in Germany, as observed, he displayed black features, namely a wide Africoid nose and full lower lip, typical of sub-Saharan Africans. Black people come in very different type of features, and hair textures, alright? But it's emphasizing stuff. The Franks that Charlemagne commanded were Romanized and converted to Christianity by the 4th century AD. Charlemagne was a military leader of the Franks and allying Lombards. He was referred to Charles the Great for saving Christian Europe and Central Europe from the invading Moors from the southwest and Caucasians in East Europe. As a result of protecting his realm, he was proclaimed the first Holy Roman Emperor. Most emperors that succeeded him were blue, is black-blooded. Afro-Europeans were either indigenous, Moors, or Moorish lineage. Basically, just saying that them Negroes are straight-up black people, all right? He was straight-up black people, all right? Straight-up black people. These were not Caucasians. Despite of what you've been taught, despite of listening to people like Henry Louis Gates, these are not Caucasians. I'm going to go further down in this book because there's some things I want to read so you can pick up on. All right, because this is actually a good book. All right, I'm going to go skip down to some interesting information. I showed you Dave McRitchie's book before, N.J. Rogers' Nature No Color Line. But this is in color. Like they used to say, it's live and it's in color. Moors' coats of arms of European nobility. A coat of arms is designed on the shield of a medieval knight that indicates family lineage. Okay, these were not slaves on shields. All right. Each knight and descendants has a right to this design. Therefore, it is passed down to his descendants, and it became the family coat of arms. The symbol on the coat of arms are meant to represent the achievements of the person, state, or corporation to whom the designs were granted. It was first worn in the 11th century of the Christian era, in the Norman invasion of England. Some of the knights on the tapestry are seen holding shields with heretic insignia with painted crosses. By the 12th century, the use of coats of arms became pretty common and was used by many knights and minor feudal lords who went into battle. By the 13th century, families were using coat of arms, usually granted to an ancestor a century before, as the family logo, and sold these arms unto flags that flew above their castles and manors. The numerous coat of arms stands as evidence that many of the most esteemed families of Europe, nobles and royals alike, were descendants of black Moors or Moors. Coat of arms were reserved for people in the highest classes in medieval Europe because they were the only one with ancestors distinguished enough to have been granted them by the king of the time. The design was passed down through the generations, from one descendant to the other, even down to the present day. Therefore, examples given below indicate that there is strong evidence that mainstream historians have abided by the white supremacy paradigm, and have written the meaningful accomplishments of blacks out of history in print, curriculum, and media. As a result, whiteness became a determinant for success, while blackness or color became an indicator of failure or inferiority. To be received a coat of arms, a monarch had to grant it for it to be legally used. The descendants must have served exceptionally in combat as a knight in manner that is vital to the preservation of the kingdom and or Christianity. Laws and customs governing who had the right to the coat of arms varied by country. Only aristocrats in most of Europe could use them. The exception was in German states, where both aristocrats and free citizens who were not noble, but who had distinguished accomplishments, could be granted by monarchs to use them. While in England and Scotland, only the person who was originally granted the coat of arms could use it as it was. Over time, churches and towns were granted the right to use coat of arms to identify themselves. In contrast to evidence, mainstream historians hide the names of the blacks that earned the coat of arms, as well as statues and relics attributed to them, alongside a family tree that ruled Europe. Unbiased observation of the oldest evidence, not whitened or redone, can delineate these individuals clusters together and pass off as Saint Maurice, despite they are distinctly different, with garbs out of sync with his sacrifice. The garbs represent the 11th century and beyond, rather than when Rome occupied Europe in early CRE. The true lineage uncovered stands in contrast to the white supremacy paradigm and the inferiority complex being imposed on the mindset of people of color. Now, these fools try to pass off everything, just say St. Maurice, these different black people. Man. These white folks are done. They're funny as hell. And here's a coat of arms. Earring on his ear. Big old earring. Loop earring. You see that with some brothers and sisters in America. Europe. This is in color. You see the Negro with the crown, image of animal, the cross right here. I mean, this little X right here. The white people in the South did not create their Confederate flag. It originated from black people, so-called black people. Now, hear this. Look at this shield. Now, why would you have this be image of a slave? Why does this come from a slave? Why would a slave be showing image of a crown? These are not no damn slave. These are people who were in power. All right? They were in power. In power of all of Europe. They were in power. These are not no, quote, African slaves. Despite what goofy white folks will tell you. Right? These are Negroes. These are black Europeans. Not no Africans, okay? Or African slaves. These are black Europeans. Those names that you have, which are considered white names, originated from Negroes. All those names, all those little English names originate from Negroes, not from your white slave master. It actually comes from black people. All right, now here we go. Popes, saints, martyrs, evangelists of the Church of Christ. Here it is. Saint Peter, also known as Simon Peter, established the Church of Rome and papacy as the first pope. He was one of the 12 original disciples of Jesus Christ. Peter, like Paul, was executed by the order of the Emperor Nero for practicing his Christian beliefs. Africoid popes that followed him would also risk martyrdom and but step forward to play a strong role in the development of the early Church of Christ. One of these Papa leaders, Pope Victor, was a native of Black Africa. Okay, I don't like that term black, but here we go. I guess there's some things I like. He was so loyal to the first pope that he asked and was buried near the body of the Apostle Peter. Pope Victor served the church during the reign of Emperor Septimius Severus, also an African from Liptus Magna, Libya, who had led his Roman legion in the victorious campaign in Britain. Pope Martitus led the church when it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. Pope Gelasius delivered Rome from the perils of famine. Born in Africa, Pope St. Victor was the first pope to celebrate the liturgy and write church documents in Latin rather than Greek. He is known for decreeing that Easter be universally celebrated on Sunday. A feast day is dedicated to him on July 28. He was followed by another African, Pope St. Victor. He bore a Latin name, as most Africans did at that time. Victor served his papacy during the reign of Emperor Septimius Severus of Rome, also an African, who had led Roman legions in Britain. I have a book called Roman Britain, and then the wall that they built over there. It talks about that, but it was an article talking about all the skeletons that they found by the wall, who built that wall with number of Negroes, man. It's one of these doggone journals and publications I had printed out that talked about that. So this is why we need to really study out real history. During his reign, the date of Easter became disputable between Rome, that observed it on Sunday, while Asiatic churches observe Easter on 14th day after the vernal equinox, regardless of the day of the week. This inconsistency caused commotion between peoples celebrating Easter and fasting for Lent. So Pope Victor responded by ordering all churches to celebrate Easter on the Sunday following the 14th day of the vernal equinox. In doing so, he broached a compromise with both parties, thus reaffirming the holy feast of Easter to be held on Sunday, as Pope Pius had done. To enforce compliance, he called Theophilus, Bishop of Alexandria, on the carpet for not doing this. Victor also condemned and excommunicated Theodore of Byzantium because of the denial of the divinity of Jesus Christ. In addition, the Pope added accolades to the attendance of the clergy. Victor was Pope for 10 years, 2 months, and 10 days. He changed the celebration of Mass in Greek to the native language of the Roman provinces of North Africa, which was Latin. Whether he died a natural death or was a martyr is in dispute. After his death, he was buried alongside the body of the apostle Peter, the first pope, in the Vatican. Pope Saint Victor I's feast day is celebrated on July 28. The second acknowledged African pope is Saint Miltiades, also called Melchiades. He resided as pope when Constantine the Great defeated his enemies and assumed control over Rome, paving the way to the end of the persecution of Christians. Constantine gave the pope a new residence, which is now known as the Papal Archbasilica of St. John Lateran. This papal residence from then on became the seat of the Christian governance. A feast day of December 10th was reserved for him. Pope Miltiades is reputed for leading the church to a final victory over the Roman Empire. During his papacy, Emperor Galerius, Licinius, and Constantine ended the persecution of Christians. They were permitted to live as Christians and practice a religion of worship. Pope Miltiades was also ensured that all the ecclesiastical buildings and the possessions that had been confiscated during the persecutions were returned. In the Lateran Palace in Rome, he was the first pope to have official residence. He granted permission to Constantine to build the Lateran Basilica, which would become the principal church of Rome and the residency of every pope for over 1,000 years. In 1969, Pope Miltiades' feast day was moved to January 10th, the date of his death. It's supposed to be the image of St. Peter before he died. Before they changed his image, just like they've always done. All right. Here's another black pope, Pope Gregory. And it was more than so-called 3 African popes. Man, all them damn popes were black to a certain period. Look at this Pope Gregory. St. Clement, Pope. Pope Galatius I was the third acknowledged African pope. Way more than that. He was the first pope to be called the Vicar of Christ. He was most famous for affirming the primacy of the papacy based on Jesus' command, naming Peter the rock of the church. He decreed that the authority of the church is always superior to civil law. He used his own funds and papal lands to feed the poor of Rome during a severe famine. Pope Galatius I feast day is reserved for November 21st. Pope Galatius, who was born in Rome of African parents and joined the clergy at an early age, he seemed to be one of the busiest African popes. His papacy lasted for 4 years, 8 months, and 18 days. He exiled non-believers from Rome and buried their books before the doors of the Basilica of the Holy Mary. Repeatedly, he discovered the city of Rome from the perils of famine. In addition, he divided the revenues of the church into fourths. One of the fourths went to the least of the population. He was renowned for his artistry of life and liberality to the poor. And I'm going to stop there. I want to stop there because I'm not going to read anymore, but I'm going to show you some more pictures of black saints and popes. Constantine the Great was a Negro too. Yeah, I said it. He was. Your history has been whitened up. Alright? Your true history has been whitened up. I'm showing these pictures of these black people in Europe because the simple fact is that the original Europeans were black. Alright? And so then you need to ask yourself, what happened to those black populations in Europe? Where'd they go? What happened to them? What happened to all these black people in Europe? What happened to them? A large number of them were exiled here to the Americas, man. And they mixed in, like I said before, with the black people that were already here. Stop thinking that your people just came over in a slave ship. Now, I've shown this picture before. Okay, cool. But our people been here, been in the Americas, and black people are Aboriginal around the world. When I constantly hear brothers and sisters just thinking that they come over in a slave ship, it is bothersome. It's really sick. But you continue to hear this from these so-called educated Negroes, these Negroes who've been heavily indoctrinated with lies. We're going to have to stop this, but this is why I give this information out, for you to really get this information and grasp it, and try to take as much as you can so you can have it for your own and you can teach your children. These are the black Europeans I just showed you. Now, the point I'm trying to get across is that these brothers and sisters traveled the world and they shared ideas and they fought amongst each other, like what I just read. That was the downfall of many of these black empires or rulership. We're going to have to really come to grips. At this moment in time, anyone who's denying this history or trying to downplay and just talking about slavery are basically highly uninformed individuals or just flat out sellout traders. I'm going to be honest with you, because there's too much information out there to prove that the people of the world originally look like us. I can remember a kid looking at cartoons. They always portray the King of England as some white man with a crown on his head and letting the bridge down and the dragon and all that stuff, when all those people over there who built those castles were Negroes. But you've been taught that you're a slave from Africa, and that's your whole history. You go get this goofy DNA test stuff done, and you keep saying that you're African. You're an African slave, and you're very redundant on that. And it's to me that just shows too many people want to enjoy being ignorant, and they got to the point. It's sad that they're willing to listen to their enemy teach their children or to teach them their history. That is a wrong thing to do, and that's sick. But many of our people are sick because their main goal is to be next to the oppressor, to lay next to the oppressor, and that's sick, and it's silly, and it's foolish. But this is what you're getting in many of these black boule people. I'm going to call their asses out. I do not care for the black boule because they've done nothing but sell us out, man. And people will try to explain, say that they've done great things. No, they haven't. Because they want to continue with their lie with that African slave trade, said he just came over in a ship from Africa. That is a damn lie. I'm showing you these black people in Europe. Where the hell them Negroes go? First of all, why isn't that talked about, discussed from these boule Negroes? Also, the Aboriginal black people are already here in the Americas, as well as the Pacific and Australia. And as soon as you show them images, you either get goofy stuff said that, or they're black, but they're not our black, or inciting that there's some black skinned Caucasians, which is ridiculous, or they just came from Africa. That's the explanation. Not realizing so-called black people are aboriginal to this land. Period. And even if some black groups came out of Africa maybe 60,000 years ago, how are they still African?